Hello and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, then a little introduction. This is a place to share stories, adventures, and everything I wish I had known before embarking on them. My name is Trina, and you're watching From VG to Here. We are back this week diving into the What to Know Before Preggo series, and this week's video we're going to talk about finances. A disclaimer before we begin, I am not a financial expert. I am not saying that this is the right or only way to do things. This is just how we went about our journey, and maybe there's things in here that could help you on yours. Also, a note that comes into play here is that we live in Canada, where there's government-funded maternity leave and child tax benefits, etc. So it may not apply based on where you're watching this video. In the case that you've had time to make the decision and start growing your family, so you know that this is coming, there's 3 major timeframes, milestones, whatnot, with major expenses that we're going to consider. The first one is pre-baby, from the time you decide to start trying until delivery or when you go off work. And this includes prep items for baby, prep items for mom, savings for next chapter, etc. The second area we're going to touch on is the baby phase. So that's birth until, let's say, about 18 months. It includes diapers, time off for maternity and parental leave, etc. And the after stage, this is up until your child has moved out. So these are kind of longer term finances, things like childcare expenses, activities, RESPs if you choose to do one, clothes, list goes on. Let's dive into each chapter a little bit more. Starting with pre-baby. As I said, once we decided that we were going to be expanding our family, we did sit down to have a discussion about budget, and you know me, I love researching. So, of course, I researched approximate costs for everything baby related. Things like cribs, car seats, strollers, rocking chair, clothes, baby monitors, etc. The list can get quite long. And we're actually going to cover baby must-haves in a video coming in a couple weeks on a baby registry. Should you choose to do one, and why you should choose to do one. So through all of my research and budget, we came up to a budget of $5,000 Canadian. You can surely spend more than that, and you can also spend less. So we fall somewhere in the middle. That was going to be for the upfront costs of having a baby. Ideally, you'd have this lump sum saved before you even find out you're pregnant. I would encourage you to do your own research and look up the things that you want and their costs so that you're not hit with sticker shock when you go to buy a crib and end up with an empty wallet. Some items that often get left out or forgotten when you're making this budget are maternity clothes for mom. Your jeans, your pants maybe might not fit you all the way up to 9 months. Other things that can get kind of expensive are seasonal wear. If you need a winter jacket to fit over your belly, now they do make extenders that work kind of universally, but even those can be $60, etc. Or if you need shorts, like maternity wear can get expensive. The cost of a private hotel room, should you wish to have one, and your insurance doesn't cover it. Time off for doctor's appointments. If you don't have paid time off, that could dig into your expenses, even just your monthly expenses. And photographers. If you want to do maternity photos, newborn photos, whatnot, something else to consider in your budget. The second portion of this pre-baby stage is actually expenses. So these aren't one-time costs. These are recurring costs for the next chapter once the baby has arrived. I strongly advise don't wait to do the math until then and then realize you could be short money. Do it now so that you can start saving now, and it will set you up for the next chapters that we're going to go through. You're going to want to decide, and the government's going to tell you to decide, whether you want to take the 12 or 18-month maternity leave and how much time each parent is going to take. I'm not going to cover the details in this video, but there are options that you might not be aware of. For example, Dally took 3 months paid parental leave. Look into it, see what applies where you live. Once you know how long you plan on taking off, then you can start doing some of the math. What will your expenses be for the time period that you're not working? What expenses can you cut out of your budget if you're not working? Maybe you take transit to work usually, but if you're not going to work, you won't need monthly transit passes. What expenses can you put on hold while on maternity leave? Most student loans might apply to this. You can check with your lender. Are there expenses, savings you do not want to stop contributing to while you're on leave? This could include things like if you were paying into a group insurance plan through your work, those payments will have to be made even if you're not working. Should you choose to stay opt-in, your retirement fund, if you want to keep contributing to that, you're going to have to keep paying into that. Any high interest payments, even your student loan, if you don't want to put a pause on that. Once you know what your expected expenses are going to be, you can use the EI calculator, which I'll link down below, and to try and calculate an estimate, at least, of what your EI payments will be. This can help you to identify what your income is hopefully going to be during your maternity leave or paternity leave, and how much savings you're going to need to save on top of that to meet your expenses, especially if you plan to be off longer than the EI payment time frame, so you'd be going completely without pay. On to chapter 2 of 3, the baby chapter. So we've covered the things that you need before delivery, before baby gets here. But what about the costs that come once baby is here? Even with a baby registry, there may still be items that you need within the first year to the year and a half of baby's life that you're going to want to consider in your budget. The first and maybe the most obvious one is diapers. There's a formula somewhere that'll give you an estimate on how many diapers babies go through based on their age. And you can do the math to figure out how much a box of diapers costs you and pretty much add that to your grocery list for approximately the first 18 months, if not longer. Formula. Even if you're planning on breastfeeding, you can't predict what will happen and what scenario will be thrown your way. Formula is expensive and you don't want to be without if your circumstances mean you end up needing to use formula. I'm not saying to stock up beforehand, gosh no, but it is important to consider it in your budget, maybe as a miscellaneous or a flex fund, just in case you need to use it. And if you don't, then great, you have a little extra cash, which who doesn't want extra cash laying around? Clothes. Man, first, babies grow fast. Like when they're little, they grow fast. And then once the growing starts to slow down, the amount of dirt picks up. Like I swear, Elisa went through her clothes in the first year like that. And now she's growing much slower than she was. But man, we are having to throw clothes out because I can't, the stains, no matter how hard I try to get them out, I get one out, there's 3 more the next time she wears it. So clothes are a big expense that'll add up. There's also the factor of seasons. So if your child is growing at a faster rate even, they might not be able to wear the same snowsuit every year. So you're looking at a new snowsuit every year, new snow boots every year for that first little bit until they kind of start to plateau a little more. But those can get quite expensive. So clothing budget, you're just going to want to consider that every year. Car seat. Now you're probably thinking, I purchased a car seat, I got a bucket seat to bring my baby home from the hospital in. But wait, no, because by around 1 year of age, most babies have outgrown that car seat, unless you've gotten a convertible car seat from the beginning. This is something you really don't want to be caught out of the blue because they can range anywhere from $100 to $400. This could be a pro to, if you have a car, getting a convertible car seat from the get-go, but then you can't click and go into the stroller, like the convenience from an infant car seat. Things to consider, but just keep in mind that as your kid grows, they'll need another car seat. And last but not least for this is a high chair. For baby safety and for your peace of mind, the safest place for baby to be eating is in a high chair. Now, that being said, you could put this on your baby registry and it could help cut down on costs if you have the space for storing it, because they won't need it till around 6 months of age. And our third and final chapter, the after. So you've gone back to work, or not, your choice, and your little babe is growing, graduating from an infant to toddlerhood right in front of your eyes. The costs are also seemingly growing for your little one. Some things to consider and tips for how to cover them. Daycare. If you live in Quebec, which is our case, the government has a subsidy program that covers a portion of the cost of daycare. So you can either get into one of the government-run daycares, looking at $8 a day, or if you get into a private daycare, you can get a chunk of the money back. So that's the situation that we're in. Currently, private daycares are running around $50 a day, and with the subsidy program, we're actually only paying $20 a day, which is still a good chunk of money, though, that you want to include in your budget. The next thing is an RESP. If you choose to open a registered education savings plan for your child, the main thing you want to know is that the government of Canada will match 20% of your contributions up to a maximum of $500 a year. This means that the sweet spot is to put $2,500 a year into your child's RESP to maximize the contributions from the government. The second thing I want to mention, since we're on this topic, is there is a Canadian Child Benefit. So it's a federal monthly payout from the government. And there's a calculator online for you to receive kind of an estimate of how much you can anticipate to receive. Our biggest tip is, if you have already prepared for all the previous expenses that we've discussed, use this money to add that $2,500 a year to your child's RESP, and this provides you with an entirely government-funded education fund for your child. And actually, a tip I want to add on there is that if you aren't familiar with investing either, so the RESP money automatically goes into a certain investment portfolio, like a mutual fund. You can change which mutual fund that goes into. So the RESP money doesn't have to go in to the just kind of like default option. If you're familiar with investing, you can speak to who you're investing through. We did go with the bank because it felt like the safest option. There are a lot of companies out there that, I don't know, they have a lot of fine print, we'll put it that way. So make sure that if you are choosing to go with an RESP, to really, really read all the fine print and know kind of where your rights are with that money, and the money end, as well as like the interest that you accumulate on that money. Next up is extracurricular activities. And you might be thinking, like, my kid's a year old, what are we talking about? But there are things for us that were really important. So we wanted to make sure Elisa knows how to swim. So we're looking at swimming lessons for her to get familiar with the water. She's got a lot of energy, so we did put her in gymnastics recently. These things cost money. They're not just free unless you have to have a pool, which great. But then even if you're hiring an instructor, like, there's costs. And the activities too, they start sooner than you think. I had no idea that they had swimming lessons for like 4-month-olds, but they do. Every quarter we receive another contribution from the government, and we use that to pay for the mentioned above. Not a need to do, obviously your kid doesn't need to do activities, but something to consider if you do want to put them in something. The next thing is birthday parties and holidays. Should you choose to celebrate either or, these things can add up fast. I try to keep a running list throughout the year of things that Elisa is interested in, or I guess kind of like a gift list, like things that she either wants or needs. That way, anytime someone's like, oh, hey, like, what can we get Elisa? Or is there anything that she's interested in? I can just pull it up, and I know it's something that I have previously thought about. So it's not me trying to like name something off the top of my head. We are also in a boat where Elisa's birthday is so close to Christmas that everything kind of adds up all at once. Like, she just gets overwhelmed with a bunch of things at one time. So I do kind of put away a couple toys. Like, she opens them all fine, but then I kind of take a couple away and put them this sounds kind of mean, but like, I hide them away and we'll bring them out throughout the year so that when she is ready for her next activity, okay, I don't even feel, you know what, even if it is a little mean, I don't feel bad about it, because some of these items that I've said, like, to be gifted to Elisa, are things that she's going to grow into in the next year. Maybe it's a skill she hasn't quite developed, but we're working towards. Then it's like, okay, in a couple months when she has developed it, we can pull that toy out. This is another reason why we stick with kind of more open-ended toys, which I cover in a different video, because they're toys that she'll keep playing with for years and years and years, so that we can get the most bang for our buck out of them. Another expense for the post-baby years, I guess. Clothes. We touched on it. They just keep growing. You need a yearly budget. And the last item that we want to consider into your budget for, again, post-baby, rest of their childhood, teenage, before they move out years, is food. There's a reason they say another mouth to feed. Although they won't eat that much in the beginning as they start their feeding journey, it is wise to increase that budget. We've found, especially when it comes to like meat, Elisa will eat an adult serving, or things like eggs or even pasta. Like, depending on the day, she could be eating like an adult sized portion. Obviously not all the time, but like, they fluctuate. So you're definitely going to want to include that in an increase in food budget. Okay, this video came out a lot longer than I had anticipated, but I do hope that it helps you with the financial side of growing your family. And if anything, that maybe it gave you some tips on how to prepare. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below and I'll respond to them in the comments. Also, if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so you're notified when next week's video comes out on trimester 2. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, life is what happens between the plans that you make. Bye, guys.